On behalf of my three distinguished panelists, I have to note the structural inequality that began with the amount of time we were given in the program. The further power grab by my AUC colleague and moderator, who used his majority powers to take from us in the minority time that we needed to make sure that the three papers get the time that they need. But we are a peaceful people here at this table. We are not going to respond with aggression. We're going to respond with fantastic presentations that will keep you alert until lunch. So I'd like to begin today by changing the order just a little bit. We have two papers that deal with Egypt. The first will be by Ms. Yusra El-Gindi. She and I are part of a research collective where she's doing very interesting work on academic freedom and how it's perceived in Egyptian universities, but her main area of research is minorities and particularly the situation of Egypt, and we're delighted to have her today. Her paper is going to set the stage for us with both a historical and a current presentation of the status of the Coptic Christian group in Egypt. And then we'll turn to Dr. Maged Osman, who will speak about popular opinion, what we can learn from opinion polls about the ways Egyptians perceive the other, perceive diversity in their own societies. So with your permission, we'll change the order and we'll begin with Yusra.
Thank you, Dr. Barbara. I would like to welcome you all, and I would like to thank first the AUC Forum, as well as Ibn Khaldun Center for organizing this conference. I think it's a timely conference, and we all need to discuss this issue. I'm very happy with the diversity in this room. So, yeah, okay. I would like to start first by giving my condolences to the Egyptian national and Coptic community due to the recent events that took place in Egypt that took the lives of 46 Egyptians. It's an okay. Yeah. Oops, sorry. No, it went off. This went off. I think, is it working? Yes, please. When I brought this closer. It slipped. Can you just correct that? Okay. Okay, can you all hear me now? I hope so. Perfect.
Yeah.
No, perfect. Thank you. Please. Okay, thank you. So this paper is on the new millet system for managing diversity in Egypt, the case of the Copts. And basically, to discuss diversity in Egypt, we are about 92 million Egyptians today. Between 5 and 15% are Christians, based on press reports. Since we don't really have proper official statistics, we are resorting to press reports to make these these percentages. So 5 to 15% are Christians, of which 90% are Coptic Orthodox and about 10% are Catholic and Evangelical. There are about 800,000 to 2 million non-Orthodox Muslims, about 2,000 to 3,000 Baha'is, and about 30 Jews. The Egyptian state authorities are facing challenge on how to manage these different groups. Historically, what is a millet system? What is millet system that I'm going to be referring a lot to in this paper? Historically, the millet system was used in the Ottoman Empire to manage diversity. And as previous speakers have stated, that this was basically the system that allowed the Ottoman Empire to exist despite its vast borders, and it included lots and lots of communities within its borders, if we can say. The religious groups were granted semi-autonomous status, which led to reducing the friction with the Islamic State. Different religious communities in the empire had the freedom to select their religious leaders, organize their own schools and courts. The religious leaders were the focal points here in the communication between the state and the community. And at stages of time, even the community heads were collecting taxes for the state. However, the weakness of the system is that it did not recognize non-Abrahamic religions or non-Orthodox Muslims. So Baha'is, for example, are not included, Shiites are not included according to the system. With modernizing the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century and the waning of the millet system, we found that modernizing the empire required changes in the way that society was organized. Muslims and non-Muslims had to have equal rights. The Hati Hamayun, which was issued to reorganize the rights of non-Muslims, Al-Khatt al-Hamayuni, it gave basically non-Muslims the right to build houses of worship, and it allowed them to elect Majlis Milli, which is made up of both clergy and the laity. The laity basically are the secular people like all of us here, whereas the clergy are members of the church, such as a priest, bishop, or pope, of course. In Egypt was autonomous under the rule of Muhammad Ali. In 1855, it saw jizya tax that was abolished. In 1856, non-Muslims were drafted in the army. And with 1874 was the first community council which was formed. The new millet system, however, is the one that I'm referring to in this paper, took place after 1952, the post-1952 order. This is an informal system that is managing interfaith issues that exists parallel to legal institutions, based on direct relations between the religious community head and the president. This was on the expense of the laity, who at previous times had capability to access presidents and state authorities directly. It increased the power of the clergy. In the post-1952 order, the reduction of the power of the Coptic laity through land reclamation and dissolving political parties and civil society under the Nasser regime led to an imbalance inside the community. And it led to the increase of the power of the church, which was strengthened more by bylaws for the selection of the patriarch, which gave the conservative members of the Coptic community what they wanted to see in selection of patriarch who was from the monks rather than from the secular or the laity. We saw that in 1960, Coptic endowment management was given to the Waqf organization. So previously it was the laity that was organizing Waqf. However, it was removed and was given to the church leadership. And the dissolution of the community council, Al-Majlis al-Milli, it was dissolved completely in 1962. And this was the major power base of the laity in managing the affairs of the community. A strategic accord was agreed, which constituted this new millet system. Based on this, the Pope would give unlimited support to the regime, concessions to the state to meet the demands of the Pope. So while the Pope would be supporting the regime, the state would give concessions in order to meet the demands of the Coptic community. This is done as a one-to-one relationship between the Pope and the president. And this would be the pattern of managing intercommunal issues for the following presidents as well. The research question this paper poses is, how are both the Egyptian state and the minorities faring under the new millet system? And I'm taking in particular the Copts as a case study because Copts are the largest religious minority in Egypt today and the largest Christian community in the Middle East. They are actually accepted by the previous millet system, or the traditional millet system, and thus they seem to be more likely to integrate in the new millet system than other minorities such as the Shiites and the Baha'is. So actually we're taking the more optimistic minority, the minority with most of the optimism. Previous researchers had society-centered approaches, which basically focused on the group's ability to influence the state. Here, state weakness is a result of the proliferation of secondary forms of belongings and identity, including the tribe, sect, and region. The weakness of this approach is that it fails to examine the effects of how the state manages diversity, focusing on what the state is doing to manage its diversity and how it's programming these intercommunal relations is very important. And that's why this paper will will adopt a state-centered approach. A state-centered approach is one in which state structures is believed to influence the path of institutional development and the rise of social associations. The state is perceived as an autonomous entity. State strength in this case depends on the ability of the state to access the population directly and penetrate society. States which are characterized by patrimonial patterns of recruitment and operations are one way of viewing weak states. My argument in this paper is that while many people have spoken about the good relations between the community heads and the state heads as a sign of intercommunal peace and harmony, this paper argues that the new Millet system is a sign of state weakness. It also results in sectarianizing politics and the perpetuation of intercommunal conflict. The new Millet system is first, it's a sign of state weakness. The state relies on the mediation of the religious leaders, such as the Pope, to assure the allegiance of their communities. The state does not resolve conflicts of the citizens directly, however, through their religious community leaders. And this is very clear in the local level, for example, when there are customary sessions that actually manage relationships between the different groups, in which religious leaders are having a very obvious position and obvious role in that. This is usually done on the expense of rule of law, rather than to support rule of law. The system sectarianizes society and perpetuates conflict because it leads to the development of identity politics, politics that are directed in reference to the religious community heads. On the one hand, for example, in the Coptic community, there are Coptic movements, Coptic social movements, all of these movements that came out. They're taking the church as a starting point of reference. And on the other hand, by the way, ISIS is also taking the religious community as a point of reference. The regime would use social divisions to uphold the regime in place. So we now take a quick historical detour to see how this new Millet system was implemented throughout Egyptian history. And basically, I'd like to refer to this system as the tip of the two pyramids. So there's a pyramid, and it's the direct communication between those two heads, between the Pope on the one side and the president on the other side, that is leading the system to continue. The first is between Nasser and Cyril VI, or Kyrillos. Nasser, for example, gave concessions concerning permits of building churches. He also gave financial support to build the St. Mark's Coptic Orthodox Cathedral. In return, the Pope supported his policies on Arab socialism and supported the policies, the Nasser's policies on Israel, and even rejected some of the articles in the Second Vatican Council concerning Jews, for example. Supported the president also after the 1967 defeat. Relation with the Copts was improved, however, on the expense of Islamic groups which were harshly repressed. So in Nasser's era, we're actually seeing very good relationships with the Copts, but on the expense of another group in society that is harshly being repressed. And we're going to see that this is going to be disastrous in the coming stage, which is in Sadat's stage. There was a comeback. Sadat enfranchised political Islam groups to contain Nasser's supporters. It led to the increased pace of attacks against Copts during his time. It utilized sectarian discourse by the presidents, such as Al-Rais al-Mu'min, making Friday prayers and the sort. This led to the Pope to withdraw his support from the state. And particularly, the Pope rejected Sadat's amendments on the Constitution concerning making an article stipulating that Sharia is going to be the main source of legislation. Thus, the Pope canceled the Coptic Orthodox Easter celebrations, and as a result, Sadat put Pope Shenouda under house arrest. Mubarak, he tried as much as possible to be balanced. At the very beginning, policies that he undertook indirectly led to reduce communal conflict. Regime's confrontation with political Islam, it was strongly confronted political Islam groups, particularly in the 90s, and promoted traditional Islam, such as Al-Azhar and the so-called middle Islam, the Wasati. The Pope developed a quietist approach to improve interactions with the state after his release from house arrest. Then the Entente was resumed. The Pope openly supported Mubarak, as the presidential elections of 2005 show, and the Pope resumed his role as the representative of the Copts. The end of the Mubarak era, and we're getting very close to the revolution, both the state and the church failed to uphold their terms of the Entente. Why did they fail? The state failed to stop recurrent attacks on churches. Particularly, the Two Saints church bombing was a major disaster. It made people lose faith, or made many Copts lose faith in the willingness of the Egyptian regime at that time to protect them. On the other hand, the church failed to control the agitation among the Coptic community. Again, the rise of Coptic movements, it went out of the church borders, out of the church walls, and despite the church call on Copts not to take part in the protests, they actually did. And then this happened. And in this Tahrir Square, everybody joined, Muslims, Christians. At the very beginning, there was a strong case of unity. There was a strong case of Christians protecting Muslims, Muslims protecting Christians. We're all united, we're all one. We're all one person or one identity. However, this quickly deteriorated. And in the aftermath of the uprising, we found an increase of sectarian incidents that went hand in hand with the state's empowerment of Islamists. And that time, it was the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces that made a pact with the Muslim Brotherhood. And even though that the relationships now is not very peaceful, but at that time, it was pretty much in a pact relationship. Hand in hand with this, there was an increase of sectarian attacks, and many churches were attacked. This led to increase the identity-based political mobilization among the Copts. The Maspero protest was a climax. The attack of the army on the protest gave a forceful blow to Coptic activism. And eventually, the Muslim Brotherhood won both the parliamentary elections with about 40% of the parliament, and the presidency, of course, was won by Morsi. So this is a time when the Muslim Brotherhood was actually rising and the Copts were going down. And it went to a climax during Morsi's time. During Morsi's time, the Entente failed to be realized. It failed because there was mistrust between both parties. This is illustrated, for example, by the security institution's contribution to the attack against the cathedral in April 2013, where actually masked men were found and seen on TV to be on the side of the security forces while they were throwing Molotov cocktails inside the cathedral. While in that time, Morsi came out and said that an attack on the cathedral is like an attack on himself. However, Assam al-Haddad, who was at that time his, I think he was advisor or assistant, he came out and he said he came out and he posted on Facebook a post in English stating that it was the Copts that were at fault, completely different from the discourse that Morsi was saying in Arabic. The Coptic Orthodox Pope, thus, possibly due to the deterioration of the relationship with the Morsi regime, supported the military deposal of Morsi on July 3, 2013. And there was a price paid. In August 2013, after Rabaa and the Nahda protests or sit-ins were dispersed, there was a reprisal by the Muslim Brotherhood that led to torch more than 80 churches. With Sisi, we see the return of the entente between the state and the church. On the one hand, the state, armed forces, renovated the torched churches, approximately costing the army $34 million, according to press reports. Also, during Sisi's time, also the church building law was actually drafted, which actually, if we think about it, it facilitated the licensing of churches. Yeah. Also, the Pope would support Sisi in his visits abroad by, for example, lobbying the Coptic or mobilizing the Coptic community in the United States to greet the president. And of course, his important statement he made in 2014 contribution is that yes increases the blessings, أو نعم تزيد النعم. This is a clear a political statement of the Pope. The weakness of this new entente is clear. The Pope is viewed by the Coptic youth now as a follower of the state. A schism between the state and the Copts is likely to emerge with the inability of the state to bring the war with ISIS to a successful end. And we see the case of the St. George Church in Tanta and St. Mark's Church in Alexandria bombings, a case in which there is a lot of agitation happening inside the Coptic community. However, there are restraints, can't go out with the lack of civil society. is very dangerous for national unity, and it may result in underground radicalization. So my conclusion is that a new millet system, it's an informal system that coexists with modern institutions of citizenship and statehood. It sectarianizes politics. It thrives due to state fragility. It's also fluid. It can easily be broken and violated. It's far from a stable arrangement. Do I have time for recommendations? Okay. Okay, perfect. My recommendations are on two lines, the institutional level and the community level. The institutional recommendations is that there must be a shift in the way states' authorities manage intercommunal conflicts. State-building policies must be pursued. Ways of resolving conflict that do not uphold rule of law must be stopped. Minorities need to be handled as a civil and a cultural issue, not only a security one. The diversity expression enriches the Egyptian culture rather than endanger its unity. Securitization of minorities in Egypt must be revised, and the power of religious authorities must be reduced. And this cannot be done immediately. If we reduce the power of religious authorities today, what will happen is more likely a civil war. This cannot take place without these community-level recommendations. There must be strengthening of national community cohesion. There is a need to reduce social conflict. There needs to be rights granted to groups, not on the expense of other groups in society, but together with. Need to develop a national awareness focused on a common destiny is very important, and thus developing national commemorations of attacks that would help both Muslims and Copts see themselves as sharing a common identity is important. In order for such a project to be successful, it is really dependent on developing an awareness of equality and unity among Egyptian citizens. Thank you very much.
Yusra, we really thank you for giving us a nuanced historical account, for reminding us that Coptic communities and their leaderships have been in an interesting tension, and that there were moments in Egyptian history in which citizenship seemed to be taking the place of an idea that only leaders can talk to leaders in order to resolve disputes. I think we'll turn next to a dear friend of mine who I first knew as a distinguished professor of statistics at Cairo University. No one was surprised when he was tapped in one of the very first post-revolutionary governments to be our Minister of Communication. He had great dreams for opening up information, making it accessible to the population. I remember we were going to have electronic elections also at one point. And these are, of course, still dreams that we hope will one day be realized. What Professor Magid has done in the last few years is an incredibly important institution which is polling the public opinion of Egyptians on an entire array of issues, from how they feel about climate change to local political issues to global issues, and performing a really important service for us as we tried to build the new Egypt. Those of you who don't know about Basira Center, you can sign up for their number of the day, receive it either on your cell phone or in your email, and it's a wonderful way to keep up with the role and the power of statistics in society. Dr. Magid.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barbara, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. What I'm going to try to describe here is the citizen attitude and values regarding diversity in Egypt. And actually, there is data on attitude and values that are collected through one of the projects that Basira worked in, which is the Arab Trends project. The project is a regional project that was implemented in 7 Arab countries, and it will allow for comparison between different countries. But I'm going to concentrate on the part of Egypt. The questionnaire includes questions that are related to religion, democracy, and gender. and questions were posed as a sentence where the respondent is supposed to say, I agree or disagree, and when agree, strongly agree or disagree or strongly disagree. The project methodology is the data collection was based on a face-to-face survey that was conducted on a sample of in Egypt on more than 1,500 households, and that was in 7 governorates that are reflecting metropolitan area and Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, and 62 PSU was selected from the 7 governorates to allow for diversity. Geographic diversity, and the data was collected in November 2014. By the way, the 7 countries that were the other 6 countries that was applied in is Jordan, Iraq, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. And I think the publication will appear very soon for the comparison between the 7 countries. The idea is to read a sentence that is reflecting attitude and values related to religion, democracy, and gender, and through a face-to-face interview, the respondent has to say either he strongly agree or disagree or strongly disagree. One example, for example, a sentence, in a Muslim country, the political rights of non-Muslims should be less to those of Muslims. But this is the sort of, we have almost 20 sentences similar to that sentence, and I'm going to give you some ideas about the results. Just to try to understand the landscape, I think we have to sort of understand that diversity, at least in Egypt, but to a large extent in other countries in the Middle East, are related to religion, democracy, and gender. And at least in Egypt, the gender dimension is sort of interacting with the other two dimensions in a way that is very interesting to understand. And I think we need a lot of further research to fully understand the complexity of the matter. And there is sort of communality between the three dimensions, and I think gender is sort of playing a role in making things look that there is no religious tolerance. However, gender is explaining part of this lack of tolerance in terms of religion. I'll give you just an example of the questions. For example, R for religion, D for democracy, and G for gender. If a Muslim converts to another religion, he or she must be punished by execution. That was one of the sentences in the survey. I prefer a religious party over a non-religious based political party. This is representing democracy. For gender, a married woman can work outside the home if she wishes. But we have also a set of sentences that are mixing things together. For example, democracy in a Western form of government that is not compatible with Islam. Do you agree on that statement or not? This is sort of an interaction between democracy and religion. Another sentence like women should have equal inheritance rights. It's mixing between religion and gender. Another sentence like women can assume judicial office is a mixing of gender and democracy. And at the end, a woman can be president or prime minister of a Muslim country. It mixes the three dimensions together. In the analysis, I'm going to show you some of the sentences that is, it seems to show that the Egyptians are liberal than you expect. For example, when you ask the question, democracy is a Western form of government that is not compatible with Islam, you will find that a majority of the respondent will will disagree with this statement. 58% will strongly disagree, and 35% will disagree. Similarly, you will find the three other statements that was listed here. Religious clerics should not influence how people vote in election. People disagree. People agree on that. Then they look like more liberal than we expect. In a Muslim country, the political rights of non-Muslim should be less than those of Muslim. 88% disagree on that statement. Religious practice should be separated from socio-economic life. 82% agree on that. This is one side of the story, but this is not the only side of the story. You can find other questions that are reflecting a very traditional way of thinking. If a Muslim converts to another religion, he or she must be punished by execution. 67% agree on that statement. Either strongly agree, 43%, 24% agree on it. Other sentence that also is reflecting a more traditional culture: a woman should have equal inheritance rights. 91% disagree, and of course the sample include 50%, almost 50% males and 50% females. But the total sample, 91% disagree. A woman can travel abroad by herself if she wishes. 82% disagree. The law should not allow a man to marry more than one woman. 80% disagree. This is really the other side of the coin, very traditional society. I will take the question that is, the most interesting question. If a Muslim converts to another religion, she or he must be punished by execution. And I'm going to try to look at the disparity in this question. Actually, if you look at the difference between males and females, the difference is not large, but females are more in the side of agreeing on that statement. For generation, less than 30%, less than 30 years, 30 to 50, and more than 50. The older you are, the more traditional you are, and you agree with the statement. And when you look at education, people with university degree or higher, they are less likely to agree on that. However, the difference, as you see in the graph, is not very different. However, other set of sentence will show a sort of polarization where the population is divided among them. You will find like around 45 to 55% are either in one way, on one side or the other. A woman can be president or prime minister of a Muslim country. You will find that half of the sample disagree or approve and agree, and the other half disagree. The same for a woman can assume judicial office. The same for a married woman can work outside the home if she wishes. Only, well, there is like 45% disagree on that, but 55% agree. Men and women should have equal rights when making the decision to divorce. It is split by, but more approved, but it is in the range of half-half, 50-50. Okay. If we look at questions that are reflecting polarization and to look at the difference between subgroups, for the 4 question, men and women should have equal rights when making the decision to divorce. There is 15% between males and females. Of course, females will be more likely to ask for equal rights. And for the last sentence, a woman can be president or prime minister of a Muslim country. There is a difference of 13% between females and females, of course, in favor of females. But for the other two questions that are related to a married woman can work outside home and woman can assume judicial office, the difference between males and females is only 8% and 6%. So it's not really, but the large difference is in the first question related to decision on divorce. This is the difference between males and females. If we look at the difference according to education, we will find that the first sentence that is related to making decision on divorce, there is no difference between different level of education. Education is not making a difference. But for the other 3 sentences, there is a considerable difference, or education is explaining when we compare graduate from university and the lower level of education. There is 20% difference when talking about working right to work for women. 14% to the right to assume judicial office, and 13% related to a woman being a president or a prime minister. The surprise is on the difference between ages. There is no difference almost between, for the fourth question, between people who are below 30 and above 50. Then generation is, is as conservative as older. Youth and old generation 50 plus is not different. The difference is usually less than 5%, which is negligible given the sample size and the margin of error that you assume in this kind of surveys. To conclude, we find a number of sentences that is showing that this is a traditional society, another set of questions that is showing that this is a liberal society, and another set is sort of showing that the population is divided or polarized among traditional and non-traditional society. But some of the sentences are interesting to compare. For example, when you compare the sentence on if a Muslim converts to another religion, she or he must be punished by execution, and a majority agree on that question. And another sentence, which is on the other side, in a Muslim country, the political rights of non-Muslims should be less to those of Muslim, and the majority disagree on that. This is sort of, they are totally different. Looking at sticking to Islam, you cannot go out from Islam, but we accept that non-Muslim have the same rights as Muslim. But this is a sort of, it is for the first look, it looks like a paradox, but I think it needs more analysis, and the wording of the question need to be more sharper than that to understand what's going on. Also, it is obvious that the gender dimension is playing a very important role in identifying how the society is traditional, and for the questions that are related to gender, usually the majority of the people, including females, are on the traditional side rather than the liberal side. To conclude, I think according to what we learned from this set of data, and and I would like to also to mention that this set of data, some of the questions are very similar to what have been collected through the World Value Survey or the Arab Barometer or the Latino Barometer, etc. There is some similarity in the questions and in the sentence that I mentioned. However, in the Arab Trends, we try to revise few of those questions and to add a new sentence to it. But I think there is a need for a better understanding for attitude and values related to religion, democracy, and gender. And there is a need for better tools for measurement. I think we need to revise those sentences and those questions and to come up with new question that is sort of trying to fine-tune the difference between people and how diversity play a role in that. But there is also a number of questions that need to be answered, and I think how gender interacts with the religion and democracy to impact tolerance is very important in this part of the world. But also why attitude toward gender go beyond religious belief. For example, we have a question on whether you agree that a woman has the right to put in the marriage contract some conditions, and most of the Egyptians, they don't agree on that, even though this is part of Sharia. But of course, even among females, they are not really welcoming this idea. And sometimes the gender attitude go beyond religion. And maybe the third question that need also to be answered, which is very complex one, the impact of terrorism, popularism, and decreasing tolerance in the West, and the economic hardship that is happening in the region, how this will affect those questions. Those questions was measured or collected in 2014, but of course, if you collect this data again this year or next year, maybe those conditions and the ecosystem that is happening can have an impact on the results. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for introducing gender into this discussion of diversity and others, and reminding us that attitudes are inconsistent, can reflect the chaos or the uncertainty in a particular historical moment in society. And I think it'll be very interesting to see if we get trend data that help us sort out some of these very interesting findings, and I know it will open the door for a good discussion. This session is about the Nile Valley. Like the Tigris and the Euphrates, it's a mighty river that has spawned very important civilizations. Egypt is not a homogeneous society by any means, but if we compare it to Sudan and the plethora of languages, cultures, tribes, and peoples, we realize that my colleague, Dr. Ibrahim Noor, who's devoted his life to the study of his country, has a good example of the issues of diversity in our region. I first knew Dr. Ibrahim when we had the privilege of managing a research awards program, Me Awards, for some of you who are old enough to remember, which no longer exists and which offered opportunities to young scholars. He moved on to the American University in Cairo, where he's now the chair of the political science department. And I don't want to take more time away from him, so please give us the perspective on Southern Sudan.
No, it's okay. Well, it is a pleasure to be again in the chairmanship of Dr. Barbara. She appointed me as director of Me Awards sometimes 19 years ago.
We're not counting.
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm not going to speak about Southern Sudan. This about the making of diversity in Northern Sudan. My reason is very simple. Unlike what some statements that were made this morning, for example, the war in Southern Sudan started before independence, during the colonial people. Out of 58 years of British colonialism, 40 years South Sudan was a blocked area, and they wanted to even to annex it to Uganda or Kenya. This is no justification. But the other important issue is that the separation of the North and South, despite its tragic effect, has been on consensus, arrived by consensus by both opposition and the Islamist rule in Khartoum. So we do have my presentation is more historical. First, not because of fun of history of ethnic diversity in Riverian Sudan. We call it Riverian Sudan. We mean all along the Nile, and this was where the ancient civilization of Sudan, the Nubian, were mixing with the Arab. Very interesting issue about Sudan is that it is a site for migratory inflows that shaped and continue to shape the diversity from Nubian pre-Christian kingdoms to Christian kingdoms and to post-Islamization. And I'm saying this because when Amr ibn al-As conquered Egypt in 700 years, they sent an army to conquer Sudan by Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh, but he was defeated by the allied Christian kingdoms of Sudan, starting from Aswan down to Khartoum. And Khartoum was a Christian kingdom, but it was not called Khartoum. It was defeated in 1502. So Islamization of Sudan was a very gradual one. The other important issue that I wanted to mention is that we have a lot of influx of migrants, both from pre-Islamic, from Arab Peninsula, and in post-Islamic world, and also through the sub-Sahara Africa after the defeat of the Andalus, where Arab Bedouin migrated to Sudan. I know history is not the topic of this class, but if history is completely ignored in the textbooks, we have never been Christian, we have never defeated the Islamic army, we have never, no, we did have that interesting history. My contribution is essentially how ethnicities are constructed and reconstructed over time. And now I will start my 15 minutes Arabic time. Arabic time, I mean it. Okay, I will try to be more British if I succeed. Pre-Islam Christian Nubia was dominant, but Arab who migrated to Sudan before Islam were integrated, and Islamization of Sudan was very gradual. How? According to the Nubian culture, those who inherit the king are not the son of the king, but the son of the daughter of the king. What we call Thaqafa Amawiya, not meaning the Amawite kingdom, but Thaqafa in the sense that in the Arabic culture, أبناؤنا أبناء أبنائنا وأبناء بناتنا أبناء الرجال الآخر. The Nubian culture is just the opposite. And this enabled the Islamization of Sudan and the gradual Islamization of Sudan, and also the mixture between the Nubian and Arabs. And this is why in my abstract I said, if we look at any family in the Riverian Sudan, we could see all these interesting histories of influx of population around Sudan or Riverian Sudan. Now, quickly, do I have 10 minutes? Something? If I go quickly through the history, early history, we know that numerous Nubian kingdoms along the Nile, kingdom of Kush, known from pottery and Egyptian records. Kush conquered Egypt, largest unified state in the world at the time, but the Assyrians drive Kush pharaohs, particularly Taharqa, back to 14th Cataract, where they established the Nabta and Marawi kingdom. Arabs conquered Egypt in 640, Treaty of Bakht in 641 with the Nubians, interpretation disputed, but seems to be involved in tribute to Nubia to Egypt. Alwa and Nabta, 3 small kingdoms Christianized by 580, merged into a kingdom of Dungula, which survives the Nubian Christian kingdoms until 1323. Written records in Greek. And of course now the church of Dungula became the mosque of Dungula. And it is the same building that was built in 1323. Famous discovered in caves along the Nile when UNICEF rescued the archaeological treasure after flooding. Now, conversion to Islam and shift to Arab identity genealogies process occurred slowly, no conquest, no sharp time, but continual that is over centuries through the long period of peace, conflict between Egypt and Arab crossing the Red Sea also did have an important contribution to the mixture in this period. And then we have quickly the kingdom of Sinnar, a group known as Funj, conquered the kingdom of Alawa, capital of Soba, the Blue Nile, and this Khartoum in 1504. Nobody knows that history. Nobody acknowledged that history because of we are all Muslims. I am Muslim. But this is a real history of establishment. What happened is now most of the Arab as ethnicity were outside urban areas. Only those Arab who intermarried with the Nubians became part of the Riverian civilization. And that is very interesting. And until today, to a great extent, Arabs are more Bedouin than what happened to during the Egyptian time. We had another influx of Egyptian conquest in 1821. We did have many influx of other ethnicities. From Muhammad Ali Albans, Mamalik, who fled after what Muhammad Ali tried to exterminate them, so they flew to Sudan. So we do have this Mamalik in northern Sudan. And then during the Mahadist era, we did have, the point is that who is manipulating whom? Over time, for a long time, the northern Sudanese were manipulating other ethnicities, except during the Mahadist era, because the one who replaced Mahdi was coming from Western Sudan. And this is the only time when Western Sudanese were having the upper hand on Riverian Sudan. And back, of course, the British conquest in 1989 until 1956. We did have also...
Bring it up to the current period.
Yeah, to the current period. We do have this, a lot of influx from population from across the 11 countries surrounding Sudan. And we do have also influx of population coming from West Africa in their way to Mecca. Some of them don't even go to Mecca at all. They are in pilgrims, but they stay in Sudan as workers. And therefore, we do have even more recently an influx of population from the Eastern Africa, from Ethiopia, Eritrea, etc. So the ethnicity is being produced and reproduced almost continuously all through the history of Sudan. When I say produce and reproduce, I'm speaking, for example, about 3 million Ethiopian Eritrean who fled into Sudan in the last 10 years. So we do have that. How this kind of ethnicities are being manipulated by the ruling regime. For example, the case of Darfur is a very clear case. Darfur is an outcome of dry weather that caused a lot of conflict within Darfur between Darfurian of Arab origin and other Darfurians. Now, the Islamists, for example, manipulated the division to control the region and produce all these tragedies that is taking place in the global West. The same applies to manipulation of some ethnic groups in Eastern Sudan. So by the end of the day, I think the makeup of diverse ethnicity is one thing, and the manipulation by political regimes is another thing. And we do have a very clear case where manipulation is taking place. Sorry if I took too long, but I wanted just to emphasize the historical dimension of the making of diversity, because that tells us a lot in the sense that who is dominating whom and why. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while you only touched on it, I think you also were letting us know that these histories are buried by ministries of education who have one narrative about one people and one identity. And this is something we'll have to grapple with in the other countries of the region as well. I know that we've gone over time, but I think it's really important that we open this up for some discussion.
خلدون باحث من اليمن وكيل وزارة سابق وسياسي مستقل. سؤالي موجه إلى الزميلة يسرى من خلال العرض الشيق الذي عرضتيه. هل تصل الرسالة الآن أن مصر تعيش أزهى فترة من التعايش؟ وهل العامل الخارجي يمكن له أن يلعب دور في زعزعة هذا المناخ الذي يسود الآن بالرغم من الأحداث الإرهابية التي شهدتها مؤخرا؟
Let's take 2 or 3 more, very quickly.
إبراهيم حسن، جمعية الوقت الجديد، مركز ابن خلدون، مدير عام التربية والتعليم المعايش. الحقيقة أعتقد أن من أهداف الدورة والندوة الوصول أو اختراع بعض الحلول لكيفية إدارة التنوع داخل الوطن العربي. أنا شايف من الحلول دي الاهتمام بالإصلاح السياسي، إتاحة الفرصة للأقليات للتعبير عن آرائها من خلال تنظيم سياسي واضح، لأن بدون الأحزاب لن تكون هناك ديمقراطيات في الوطن العربي. الحاجة الثانية المهمة قوي وده الإصلاح السياسي ده على المدى البعيد، يعني هياخد وقت، لكن على المدى القريب ممكن أن يكون هناك لجنة عليا أو مفوضية لمنع التعصب ونشر الكراهية، لأن للأسف بعض الاتجاهات اللي فيها أغلبية وده موجود بعض في مصر تنشر الكراهية ضد الأقليات، ووجدنا للأسف برضو إن الدولة ما خدتش إجراء. لو عملنا لجنة عليا ممكن تاخد هذا الإجراء زي ما عملنا لجنة عليا لمواجهة الإرهاب. سمعنا حاليا عن أن بعض أقسام كلية الطب زي أمراض النساء يمنع دخول المسيحيين لمثل هذا التخصص.
هل في سؤال؟
من ده اقتراح للحل، أعتقد أعلى هدف الندوة، وشكرا حضرتك.
Thank you, Dr. Barbara. Dr. Ahmed Oussama Abu Doma, member of the Global Board of Trustees for United Religions Initiative, MENA region. I would like first of all to thank the speakers, the panelists, and the moderator first of all. In Arabic for Ms. Yusra Al-Hindi, you mentioned and you did a very good job in your presentation, but it needs, I think, you need to add more for the liberal time during the 20th, 30th, 40th, before the 1952. It needs a lot of focus because it was maybe the most luxurious time for the liberal values and the lifestyle between Egyptians by all, not only Muslims, Christians, Jews, Baha'is. We'll find a lot of examples about that. And what's needed is this lifestyle. We need to rehabilitate our society now regarding also what Dr. Magid mentioned in his very specific statistics. He did a good job, a great job as usual. And this showed us during your presentation the relationship between the state or the president himself and the Coptic community or the Coptic leaders, if we can say it. So what's needed is the rule of law to work on it for stability for all parts of our society. We need the community as we grow up through our parents. And I still remember Dr. Barbara when my mother was in the hospital, and I told you about what she said in the ICU when someone Muslim, we have no Christians, we have no media, we have no any other part of the family, and one was praying for her for full recovery for you and all Muslim patients. She said, no, I don't say this. I ask God for all patients because God creates all of us. This is how we grow up in our society and our parents and our generations. Now we're still facing a new challenge through open sources of information everywhere. The globalization gives us the tools for being better for our countries and for our people everywhere. And at the same time, the new generation have a lot of information without having a strong basis on the ground to build on it. Maybe historically, but we have to take care of violence. We have to take care of biased media who played a very important role to market the terrorism and extremism. So it needs a lot of work through education, through a lot of things. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we just have time for one more question in the back.
You might put that.
شكرا للمنصة ودكتور فايزة. في الواقع عندي سؤال حول عنوان المؤتمر. عنوان المؤتمر إدارة التنوع في الشرق الأوسط. مع أن الأقليات أعتقد أنه كان يجب أن يكون عنوان المؤتمر حقوق الأقليات في الشرق الأوسط. فالأقليات سواء في إيران، سواء في مصر، سواء في دول عديدة في الشرق الأوسط لم تحصل على حقوقها. فلماذا ألم يكن من الأولى أن يكون عنوان المؤتمر آلية أو كيفية أن يحصل الأقليات في الشرق الأوسط على حقوقهم؟ ولماذا هذا العنوان إدارة التنوع في الشرق الأوسط مع أنه مهدور الحقوق الأقليات؟ شكرا.
There's going to be 3 more sessions tomorrow where we're going to be opening out, as you'll see. Try to organize the sessions by geographic area just to focus historically and for other reasons about we're going to be having that broader discussion. I just want to remind the audience that all of these presenters have written very extensive papers, which they will be revising as a result of your comments and questions, and we hope to have a publication that will come out of it. And so much of things that Yusra and others weren't able to mention in the time that they had are covered actually very well in their papers. Let's start with Ibrahim and what the other
way of addressing this issue. But I'm not spreading pessimism, but I'm just reading what is happening.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your questions. أول سؤال سأله خلدون بخصوص أزهى فترات التعايش. الحقيقة أنا من غير استخدام ألفاظ بتكبر وتعمل exaggeration أنا مش هتكلم على أزهى فترات، بس اللي أنا عارفاه إن في صراع مكتوم قوي جدا في مصر، ومفيش آليات مجتمع مدني النهارده تحت ضغط يعني أمني وتحت ضغط إن هي ما بتاخدش فلوس من بره أو تحت ضغط القضاء. كل الحاجات دي بتمنعنا ان احنا نكون او ان احنا نشارك في مجتمع مدني وفي جمعيات مجتمع مدني وفي حراك مدني. وبالتالي مثلا حادثه زي مثلا حادثه طنطا واسكندريه تحصل فنتفاجأ ان مفيش يعني فين الناس اللي راحت وقفت مع المسيحيين مثلا في فتره العيد اللي دخلوا كنايس وعملوا حملات وموبيلايزيشن. مفيش الكلام ده حصل في القديسين بس ما حصلش المره دي. ودي مشكله لان ده بيؤدي لبعض الاطراف ان يحصل عمليه راديكاليزيشن، ان كل الناس حاسه ان هي منعزله وعمليه الصراع بقت بتتبلور قوي عند جماعات معينه. فهل احنا في اسهى فترات التعايش؟ ده اعتقد ان هو مفيش تعايش ممكن يحصل من غير حقوق، والحقوق ما بتتجزاش. مش هدي حقوق للمسيحي ومش هدي للمسلم، مش هدي حقوق للمسلم ما اديهاش للمسيحي. احنا عندنا مشكله انه الجماعات او سواء يعني اخوان المسلمين هي نشأت بطريقه اللي بشكل معارض للدوله، بشكل يعني حصل ريليشنال كونفليكت، احنا بنسميه ريليشنال كونفليكت. النهارده طبعا لو انت بتتكلم على الاخوان المسلمين او عوده الاخوان المسلمين للحياه السياسيه هيبقى صعب جدا 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 في اطار انه كل الناس شايفاهم اعداء. اولا لازم الاخوان المسلمين يعملوا مراجعه، ده اساسي. لازم يكون في قبول عام للناس للموضوع. عشان نعمل تعايش حقيقي لازم الناس كلها تراجع افكارها، لازم يبقى في اصلا مشروع وطني، وده المهم. احنا للاسف نفتقد النهارده المشروع الوطني. احنا اللي احنا شايفينه النهارده هي كل واحد بياخد حاجه يعني let me put it, you know, everybody wants a piece of the cake. بس we're not seeing a national strategy. That's what I'm looking for. بخصوص الإصلاح السياسي، حضرتك سألتني سؤال بخصوص الإصلاح السياسي وأهمية دور الأحزاب السياسية في الموضوع، وطبعا احنا زي المجتمع المدني برضو الأحزاب السياسية برضو بتعاني من ضعف وهشاشة شديدة جدا دلوقتي. فكرة انك تعمل لجنة عليا، هي كل الحاجات اللي شغالة على الإليتس طبعا مهمة أكيد، بس ما ينفعش ان انت تعملها على مستوى الإليتس وتنسى ان في مجتمع تحت. لازم ده كمان يخش في علاقات حوارية مع بعضه. ده ما بيحصلش. يعني سواء كان احنا عندنا مثلا كان في فعلا لجنه الازمات اللي حصلت كانت تابعه لمجلس الوزراء مباشره بعد الثوره. ايه اللي حصل فيها؟ ايه اللي هي قدمته؟ فده عندنا سؤال. تاني حاجه انا عندي مشكله ان الموضوع بس يبقى بعلاقات وديه ما بين الشيخ والقسيس، مع احترامي الشديد للجميع. يعني احنا في دوله المفروض احنا دوله قانون. فthis is very important. بس فكرة اللجان والحاجات الكبيرة دي أنا شايفة إن إحنا we become more practical، والموضوع يبقى على مستوى المجتمع المدني، يبقى فيه زي ما حضرتك قلت مع موضوع الإديوكيشن مهم جدا. ومسؤولية الدولة إن هي تبتدي الحقيقة تعمل حالة من حالات الناشونال كوهيجن، لأن ده إحنا مفتقدينه النهاردة. بخصوص الليبرال ايج اللي حضرتك ذكرته، الحقيقة I did mention it in my paper and I did choose not to put it in the presentation for out of space reasons. الحقيقة the liberal time, many people see it as liberal. In reality, it was a time in which governments were unstable. It was toppled, continuously toppled. It was a time of fascism in which fascist groups came to, and in which Islam was politicized. يعني الأحرار الدستوريين مثلا سعد زغلول كان هو الزعيم. الأحرار الدستوريين ياخدوا عايزين يرفعوا راية الإسلام علشان يقدروا إن هم يناوئوا سعيد زغلول. بالضبط. وعملوا مظبوط I agree. اوكي بيرفكت.
احنا لا احنا بالعكس احنا الفتره دي كان عندنا نقرا باشا عبيد رئيس الوزراء.
انا عارف انا فاهمه والله.
كان عندنا حياه ثقافيه رائعه.
الحقيقه انا طبعا فاهمه الكلام اللي حضرتك بتقوله. في سورسز ابتدت تفكك الليبرال ايرا على انها ساهمت في المشكله اللي احنا النهارده بنعانيها. فهدي مثل سامويل تادروس. اعتقد ان سامويل تادروس يعني باحث مهم في المجال ده، بالاضافه طبعا لسباستيان الساسر، وهو كان برضو كاتب كتاب بالانجلش وبيتكلم على نفس الموضوع ده. الليبرال ايرا كان في تراك ما كملش، ولانه ما كملش يعني ثوره 52 او الانقلاب بتاع 52 ده لم ياتي من فراغ، اتى اثر ازمه سياسيه. فخلينا بس نبص الموضوع بشكل انه ماشي الليبرال ايرا انتهى بكارثه. كارثه قلبت الموازين تماما، وهي it instituted to the lack of rule of law اللي احنا لحد النهارده بنعاني منه. مع احترامي طبعا من اللي بحاول اقوله لحضرتك انه the liberal era ادى اداره السياسه فيه ادت لكارثه. اللي حاول ساعتها ادى انه يحصل فيه ثورة، انقلاب على الملك، whatever you like to say, whichever way you like to frame it, I don't care. بس يعني خلصت بكده. يعني ما تقدرش تقول لي ان فترة حسني مبارك كانت في أزهى فترات طبعا لأنها انتهت بكارثة.
I think this needs to be continued over lunch. Okay, yeah. I think what the discussion though is telling us is that when there are periods of leadership in which modernizing and opening up societies and giving citizens more of a chance to shape policy and not just elites and leaders, when you can see diversity as win-win instead of win-lose, we see progress. And if there's going to be a way out, governments have to see the win-win in this, and we have to figure out ways to make that happen. The final word to Dr. Maggott.
Thank you. أنا هعلق على ما قاله الأستاذ إبراهيم حسن. أعتقد إنه الدستور المصري فيه مفوضية لمنع التمييز ونشر الكراهية، فدي موجودة. لكن المهم في التطبيق، يعني طبعا التطبيق هيتم إزاي هو ده الحاجة المهمة. إذا قلت تعليق صغير على ما قيل على الوضع في مصر، أنا أعتقد إنه مشكلة العلاقة بين الأقباط والنظام هي مشكلة إن دائما في طرف ثالث موجود وهو الجماعات الإسلامية، فبيبقى في أواني مستطرقة. كلما كانت الجماعات الإسلامية بتطلع إلى أعلى يعني هو لا أعتقد إنه العلاقة بين الأقباط والنظام هتصل إلى درجة من النضوج الكامل إذا كان ليس طرفا فيها الجماعات الإسلامية. لا، ليس طبعا بالقضاء عليهم، لأنه طبعا القضاء عليهم يعني ما هوش مش مسألة آنية، لكن بتكلم على انه العلاقه لا يكون ممثل فيها الجماعات الاسلاميه، بحيث ان احنا النظام بيتعامل بطريقه جيده مع الاقباط عندما يكون في عايز يضغط على الجماعات الاسلاميه والعكس. في هذه اللحظه اعتقد هتكون العلاقه اكثر نضوجا وهتبقى وين وين اكثر من انها علاقه فيها انتهازيه سياسيه. شكرا.
Okay. You've been patient, and this has been a wonderful session. I thank you for not giving me the hard time that you gave Dr. Baggott in the last one. And the reward is now some free time to have lunch, take it out in the garden, enjoy a beautiful afternoon. Thank you very much.